Hi there, I'm Kevin from Bake Boss and this is our range of airbrushes. I'm just going to show you how they work and then I'm going to go through and show you a little bit of what each one of them can do. I've just unpacked the middle-sized unit. It runs at 47 psi. It's quite powerful. It's strong enough to force metallics and thick viscous food colourings through. Comes with a moisture trap, a regulator, a hose, a cradle to hold your airbrush and a double action airbrush. This double action airbrush is fitted with a 0.5 needle. I'm just going to take this red nut off the top of the regulator and I'm going to fit the cradle on there, or the holder. I'm just going to screw it on, and now you have a place to keep your airbrush out of harm's way and stop it from getting damaged. The hose is fitted with the same fitting on both sides, so you can't make a mistake. You just screw one side onto your regulator and the other one gets fitted onto your airbrush. Finished. So I'm just going to tilt our middle-sized compressor up on an angle so that you can see the regulator and the gauge. I'm just going to turn the compressor on. And the compressor kicks in and fills this little tank with air. Currently, this compressor is sitting on just below 20 psi, which is the one indicated in the red. And that's what we use pretty much for most airbrushing cakes. 20 psi, it's a comfortable pressure to airbrush in your home without getting a load of overspray all over the counter and things like that. This one will actually go all the way up, and I'm going to turn it clockwise to approximately 47 psi. Now we use this setting to get more viscous liquids through, like the pearl sheens, the metallics, even some of the thicker painted food colourings, rather than the just standard food colouring range that we use for airbrushing. To make it go back down again, I turn it anti-clockwise, but then I have to release some of the air for it to actually register where the current PSI is sitting. So I'm turning that down, getting it racked down to 20. The only thing that you can do that adds confusion is you can overturn this. It's always better to start off at 0, so you know where you're starting from, and then turn it up. So we know we're currently sitting on approximately 20 psi. If we overturn it, because there's no locking mechanism on this regulator, we go, oh okay, but then when we turn it down, nothing seems to be happening. And it's because we've overturned it. So like I said, start at 0 and work your way up, and you'll know exactly what PSI you're using. You have a moisture lock on the bottom. Eventually this will trap some moisture in it. As I said before, the compressor compresses air and there's moisture in the air. It squeezes the air, pushes the water out, which collects in the bottom of your compressor. There's a little tank in here where the air is. That will start to collect in the bottom of here, and just to empty it, we push that button there and the water will come out. I just put a tissue underneath it to catch that. The water's caught here so that it doesn't condensate in the hose and splash out of your work. I don't know, on some of the smaller units you've seen, you've used an airbrush and you have a spit come out of just water that doesn't seem to be the food colouring that you're using, and that's compressed air forcing the moisture out, trapping it in the hose and forcing it out the end of your work. Moisture trap, knob for your regulator, and gauge for your regulator. On-off switch, and it's as simple as that. Just going to talk to you now about the airbrush. Receptacle on the top, hose on the bottom, which is your air supply, and if you screw the handle off the back here, this is the needle. Now the needle runs through the entire length of the airbrush. Down there you can see it in the receptacle. The food colouring drops down there, wraps itself around the needle. The air comes up. When you actually pull back on the trigger, the air goes in, meets the needle and the food colouring and forces it forward. It's as simple as that. The only thing you can do is bend or fish hook the tip of your needle. Now if that happens, instead of spraying a beautiful smooth spray of food colouring, you'll get a speckly effect, so you'll know when it's done. What you can do is pull your needle out and just run it along the back of your hand, and if it starts to grip the back of your hand, you'll know that you've fish hooked your needle and you'll need a new one. I always carry a spare in my kit just in case it happens in the middle of the night, and when I'm working on a big cake, I've got a needle there that I can just pop straight back in. Push your needle back in and tighten it. I'm just going to turn this compressor on. There you go. This is a special airbrush. It's called a double action airbrush. So there's two actions to actually initiate the food colouring, or the action for it to work. Push down to engage the air and pull back to engage the food colouring. One action, two action, double action airbrush. On the smaller units we have a single action airbrush, which is a constant supply of air, and you'll hear it. The compressor won't keep on cutting in and out. It'll just be going shh the whole time, and all you do is just pull back on the trigger to release the food colouring. Now, my suggestion to you is, if you are going to take one of these apart to clean, you do it on a white tablecloth. You set up your iPhone so that you sort of take it apart like a soldier would take his gun apart, and you lay everything out how you took it off. And then when it comes time for you to put it back together again, rather than trying to work off a small piece of paper that comes with the instructions, which makes perfect sense but can be a little bit difficult to decipher when you're actually physically putting it back together again, you've got reference on your phone and you can just play it back, and it's a breeze. Double action airbrush. Now this is the smaller of our units. It comes with a hose, a single action airbrush, two little clips. You just pop on the side of your unit and they cradle your airbrush. This hose doesn't have a screwing connection, it just has a push hose. You're dealing with a lot lower PSI with these units. They sit around about 18. And the control on the top, rather than having the regulator like the other one has, it's just got an on button, then mode, and we can turn it down. There's a little green LED indicator on the top that shows you you're on high, and then 4 lower speeds. You can hear the machine now constantly hissing. This is your single action airbrush. It's just a constant air supply, and all we do is we put food colouring on the top there and pull back. Works exactly the same like the other airbrush. Needle running straight through the middle. The same care needs to be taken so you don't fish hook the end. The only difference is there's not a valve inside here that's stopping the air coming through. So on the bigger units, the air is being compressed, and we use this as an on-off switch to turn the air on and off. On these smaller units, it's just constantly on. The only thing that can go wrong with these units is if we were to take a double action airbrush and put it onto a single action compressor, this little machine would want to constantly feed air through. The double action airbrush, as we know, you have to push down to initiate the air, or basically turn the air supply on. So what's going to happen is this little guy here is going to be pumping all the air through, and a double action airbrush is going to want to stop it. It will overheat and you'll end up blowing up your little compressor. Single action airbrush for a single action airbrush compressor, double action airbrush for one of the bigger units. Can you use a single action airbrush on a double action compressor? Yes, you can, but it's going to be constantly running. Again, it will get warm, and that's not ideal. So we like to use a single action airbrush on the little guy and a double action one on the bigger one. Okay, well that brings us to our third and final unit, which is the larger of the three. It runs at 47 psi, exactly like the smaller one does. Has a double piston for a smoother operation. Larger tank, so it turns itself on and off less. It doesn't get as overheated for over a longer period of time. Regulator is exactly the same. Airbrush is exactly the same. Hose, fittings, everything on this is exactly the same, except if we turn it around, on the back here is a double switch. Left for double action, right for single action airbrushes. This one will run both airbrushes, which is fantastic if you have both airbrushes and you want to be able to utilise them. It's also great to diagnose problems with airbrushes. If somebody brings one along to you and says, my airbrush isn't working, if they've got a single, you can plug it in. If they've got a double action one, you can plug that in as well. You can purchase a small manifold that just clips on the front there that you can plug 2 airbrushes in it at the same time, and you can use 2 airbrushes at the same time because this machine is built to do that. It's fantastic too. It means that you don't have to swap colours. So if you were using black and white, instead of having to wash your airbrush out and then go to a different colour, you could carry 2 airbrushes in the front there with the 2 different colours and utilise them, so you're not having to waste time cleaning your machine down all the time. Double action airbrush, grunty, smooth operating. This is my rock. This sits in my bakery. We don't pick it up and move it around. We take our cakes to this, use a turntable, and we airbrush our cakes in situ. This little guy here, We keep that in situ as well, but we can also pick this one up and walk around the bakery with this. So if we're airbrushing the underside of a large cake, I can hold it in one hand or put it on the floor and get right underneath and do what I need to do with this one. This little guy here, single action airbrush, runs at 18 psi approximately, and then 5 settings, so 18, and then those 5 settings get progressively less. A fantastic first airbrush, just to see if it's for you. And even if you move on from one of these to one of these, we would still keep one of these in our toolbox that we go out on site with. So if we have to touch up a cake, broken flour, centre of a frangipane, something we've missed, or if we've just knocked it and we need to colour it in, this is the unit that would take out in our first aid kit for our cakes, and we'd utilise this one to fix it. So for the novice, or first airbrush, just to see if it's for you, and then we keep it in our toolkit after that. This is the most popular unit. We use it for our classes, and this one we keep in situ, and this is the professional unit that we keep in our bakery that we bring our cakes to. It's fantastic. So these are our 3 airbrushes. This is why we have these 3. They do something slightly different in each case, and that's our range. So I hope you enjoy them. Thanks.